Hey there folks, I'm SpiderFish and welcome back to my channel. Your little corner of the internet where the Minecraft blocks can keep stacking quietly in the background while we wander through some of the strangest, funniest, and sometimes downright weirdest stories from the world of Reddit. If you enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. If you're here to relax, to laugh a little, to fall asleep, or just to have some company while you mine diamonds, you're in the right place. Tonight, I've got a mix of stories for you. Some funny, some messy, some dramatic, and maybe one that will leave you just a little unsettled. So let's settle in, take a breath, and get into our first story. Am I the a-hole for kicking my roommate out after she kept borrowing my clothes without asking? Alright, so here's the setup. I'm a 23-year-old woman, and I live with my roommate, Tina. We've been friends since sophomore year of college, and when we both graduated, we thought it'd be fun and practical to live together. Save money, hang out, share groceries, all that. And in the beginning, it was great. We had movie nights, we split the bills, we even cooked dinner together sometimes. The kind of sitcom living arrangement where you think, hey, maybe being an adult isn't so bad. But then the clothes situation started. See, I've always been the fashion person of the friend group. I like shopping. I like putting together outfits. And I've spent years building up a wardrobe I'm proud of. Meanwhile, Tina is more of a sweats and hoodies kind of girl. Nothing wrong with that, but it's important context. One morning, I opened my closet to get dressed for work, and half my stuff was missing. Dresses, tops, even a pair of shoes. I panicked, thinking maybe I'd been robbed. Then, 5 minutes later, Tina walks out of her room wearing one of my blouses. When I asked about it, she just shrugged. Oh, I borrowed it. Hope that's okay. Okay. This was the start of what I like to call the closet wars. At first, it was small things. A sweater here, a pair of jeans there. I tried to brush it off. But soon, it got worse. She started taking stuff without asking. Sometimes, I'd find my clothes stuffed in her laundry basket, stained or stretched out. The breaking point came when I had an important work presentation. I'd planned my outfit a week in advance, a blazer and skirt combo that made me feel confident. I went to grab it that morning, and guess what? Gone. I knocked on Tina's door, and she opened it wearing my blazer. She was literally about to walk out the door for her own job interview. When I told her I needed it, she rolled her eyes and said, "Relax, it's just clothes. We can share. That's what friends do." Number? No, Tina. Sharing is splitting a pizza, not hijacking my entire wardrobe. That night, I sat her down and said, "Listen, I don't mind you borrowing once in a while, but you have to ask first. And if I say no, that's final. Otherwise, I'm locking my closet." She laughed in my face. "You're being dramatic. Clothes are meant to be worn. You should be flattered I like your style." Flattered? Like I was supposed to say thank you for the ketchup stains on my favorite white blouse? So I bought a lock for my closet. She flipped out. She said I was ruining the trust in our friendship and that I was materialistic. But here's the kicker. Even with the lock, she found ways. One day, I came home early and caught her literally trying to pick the lock with a bobby pin. When I confronted her, she said, "You're overreacting. It's not like I'm stealing. I always bring it back." "Oh, thank you, Your Honor. She always returns the evidence." Case dismissed. The final straw came last month. I had a date, first one in a long time. I was excited, nervous, the whole deal. I'd picked out this dress that always makes me feel good. Except when I went to get it, it was gone. Again. I stormed into her room, and there she was, wearing it, taking mirror selfies. She had the audacity to say, "Well, you weren't using it tonight, were you?" That was it. I told her she had 30 days to move out. She called me heartless. She told all our friends I was kicking her out over clothes. Now, half of them think I'm the villain. It's just fabric, they say. Friendship is more important than clothes. But from my point of view, it wasn't about the clothes. It was about respect, about boundaries, and Tina never respected mine. So, am I the asshole for ending our living arrangement over this? Okay, let's take a second to breathe because, wow, this is one of those stories where I can already hear the Reddit comments typing themselves, not the asshole. And honestly, I agree. Here's the thing. Boundaries are like torches in Minecraft. Once you place them, they're supposed to keep things safe and clear. If someone keeps breaking them, you're left in the dark with mobs spawning all around. And that's not just inconvenient, that's dangerous. Clothes might sound trivial, but what this really comes down to is respect. OP set a simple rule: ask first. Tina ignored it, over and over. And when you ignore boundaries, you're saying you don't value the other person's comfort. So, am I on OP's side here? Absolutely, because if your roommate treats your closet like a thrift store with free returns, then yeah, it's time to respawn somewhere else. Alright, so that was the saga of the vanishing wardrobe and the roommate who thought borrowing was just a lifestyle choice. But now, let's lighten things up with a good old-fashioned disaster story. This one's from r/TIFU, where people confess their biggest slip-ups so the rest of us can laugh, wince, and silently think, thank goodness that wasn't me. Tifu by accidentally sending my entire office the wrong attachment. So, I work in a pretty normal corporate job. You know the type. Endless meetings, a break room that smells permanently like burnt popcorn, and a company Slack channel where people use way too many emojis for things that aren't actually exciting. Now, part of my job involves sending out weekly reports. Dry stuff, graphs, charts, data analysis. The kind of thing that makes people's eyes glaze over. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Anyway, last Thursday, I was rushing to get everything done before a meeting. I was tired, distracted, running on caffeine and leftover pizza. I pulled up my email, attached the file, hit send to all, and leaned back in my chair, proud of myself for finishing early. Except, I attached the wrong file. And not just any wrong file. Number. I attached my personal writing project. See, I've been dabbling in creative writing. Nothing serious, just for fun. And at the time, I was working on a very dramatic, very cringe-worthy fantasy novel. Think elves, dragons, a chosen one with mysterious glowing eyes. The whole 9 yards. Worse? The section I'd been working on was a romantic scene. A very intense romantic scene. Let's just say it involved a shirtless elf prince declaring his undying love under the moonlight. And that is what I sent to the entire office. I realized my mistake about 5 minutes later, when I got a reply from my boss that just said, "This doesn't seem like the quarterly sales data." My blood went cold. I opened my sent folder, and sure enough, instead of Q3_report_final.xlsx, I had sent dragonhearts_chapter12.docx. Panic doesn't even begin to describe it. I broke into a full sweat. I considered pulling the fire alarm just to distract everyone, but it was too late. The replies started rolling in. This is a bold new direction for our sales team. Honestly, I'd read more of this. And the worst one, so who's the elf prince based on? I wanted to crawl under my desk and never emerge. I immediately sent a follow-up email. Apologies, wrong attachment, please disregard. But the damage was done. People were quoting lines in the break room. My co-workers started calling me the Bard. One guy even photoshopped the elf prince onto the company logo. And the worst part? My boss actually asked me to finish the story, because now she wanted to know what happened next. So, not only did I fail at my job, but I also became the accidental author-in-residence for a bunch of accountants. Okay, let's just pause here and appreciate the sheer beauty of this disaster. On the one hand, embarrassing. On the other hand, iconic. Because listen, if you're going to send the wrong attachment to your entire office, at least make it something entertaining. Better a love-struck elf than your grocery list of cat memes. Here's the way I see it. This wasn't a failure, it was a rebrand. OP didn't mess up. They launched a new career. Now, instead of the data guy, they're the one who secretly writes fantasy novels. And honestly, that's a way cooler reputation. It's like in Minecraft. Sometimes you mine in the wrong direction and hit lava, but other times you dig into a cave full of diamonds. Sure, you panicked when you saw the lava, but everyone else just saw the sparkle. All right, so we've had clothes-thieving roommates and accidental office novel readings. Now it's time for some relationship drama. The kind that makes you lean back, shake your head, and whisper, "Oh no, they didn't." This one has scandal written all over it, and it comes straight from a post on r/relationships. My fiancé invited his work wife to our engagement party, and she gave a speech that made me question everything. So, I'm a 29-year-old woman, and I've been with my fiancé, let's call him Mark, for about 3 years. For the most part, things have been good. He's charming, he's ambitious, he remembers to put the toilet seat down. You know, the basics. But there's always been one small issue: his work wife. If you're not familiar, a work wife is basically that co-worker you're really close with. The one you eat lunch with, joke with, vent about the boss with. Innocent in theory. Except Mark's work wife, let's call her Rachel, has always felt different. They text constantly, even after hours. They have inside jokes I don't get. And when I once jokingly said, "Should I be jealous?" Mark laughed and said, "Don't worry, she's married." Cool. Except Rachel's husband is apparently a ghost, because I've never seen him at any of their office functions. Fast forward to last month. Mark proposed, I said yes, and our families decided to throw us a big engagement party. Lots of food, lots of champagne, lots of people giving toasts about how perfect we are together. And then Rachel showed up. Now, I didn't even know she was invited. Mark casually mentioned, "Oh yeah, I asked Rachel to come. She's important to me." Which, okay, but maybe a heads up would have been nice. Anyway, she arrives, dressed to kill. Red dress, high heels, looking like she was attending the Oscars instead of an engagement party. People noticed. My aunt leaned over and whispered, "Isn't that the co-worker?" Halfway through the night, people started giving little speeches. Sweet, funny, a little embarrassing, the usual. Then Rachel stood up, champagne flute in hand. She tapped her glass and said, "I just want to say a few words about Mark." The room went quiet. And then she launched into what can only be described as the most inappropriate tribute speech I've ever heard. She talked about how Mark was the most reliable man she's ever known. She mentioned how he always lights up the office with his smile. She told this long story about a late night at work where it felt like it was just the two of us against the world. And then, the kicker, she said, "Mark, you'll always be my partner in crime, no matter what happens." The room erupted in awkward laughter. My grandmother actually choked on her wine. Meanwhile, Mark was just sitting there, grinning like an idiot. After the party, I asked Mark what the hell that was. He brushed it off. That's just how Rachel is. She's dramatic, don't read into it. But here's the thing, people did read into it. My cousin cornered me in the bathroom and asked if I was worried. My mom said she seemed very close to him. And my best friend flat out said, "That woman is in love with your fiancé." I told Mark this, and he got defensive. He said, "You're overreacting." Rachel's marriage is solid. She's just a little extra. But then, last week, I saw a text pop up on his phone. From Rachel. It said, "I can't stop thinking about your speech at the party. You really are my person." My stomach dropped. I confronted him again. He swore up and down that it was nothing, that Rachel has a flirty personality, and that I'm blowing things out of proportion. He even accused me of being insecure. But now, I can't stop wondering, if this is how she acts when I'm in the room, what's happening when I'm not? Do I trust him and risk looking like a fool? Or do I pull the plug on this engagement before I marry someone who might already be emotionally committed to someone else? Oh boy, this is exactly the kind of scandal that makes Reddit explode with 10,000 comments in a day. Let's be real. The whole work wife thing can be harmless until it's not. And Rachel giving a speech that sounded like a love letter at the engagement party? That's not harmless. That's a red flag the size of a Minecraft beacon. Here's what gets me. Mark didn't even try to set boundaries. Instead of pulling back or telling Rachel to chill, he just smiled through it. That tells me he either enjoys the attention or he's way too afraid to rock the boat. Neither option is great if you're about to build a life together. My take? OP isn't overreacting. If anything, she's underreacting. Because when your fiancé's coworker gives a speech that sounds more like a wedding vow than an engagement toast, you need to start asking hard questions. And maybe, just maybe, Rachel should stick to her own husband, wherever he is. All right, we've tiptoed through wardrobe wars, survived an office fantasy novel detour, and sidestepped an engagement party toast that sounded suspiciously like a vow. Let's lean fully into scandal for this one. The kind that starts on a neighborhood Facebook group and ends in an explosion of potato salad and secrets. Deep breath. Here we go. Am I the a-hole for exposing the anonymous neighborhood gossip account at our block party, when it turned out to be my mother-in-law? I live in a very normal suburb with very abnormal energy. The kind of cul-de-sac where people mow their lawns in diagonal lines and then subtly judge you if you don't. We've got dog walkers who know everyone's business, a HOA president who breathes covenants and restrictions like oxygen, and a Facebook group that should honestly be studied by sociologists. About 6 months ago, an anonymous account appeared in that group. The name was Concerned Neighbor, which feels like a red flag in the same way a creeper hissing behind you does. Concerned Neighbor posted about everything. Trash cans left out past pickup. Teens skateboarding recklessly. Translation, slowly and politely. Someone's inflatable Halloween dragon being an affront to property values. Every post was a little condescending, a little sanctimonious, and somehow always had a detail that only a very nearby person could know. At first it was funny, then it started to hit people's nerves. A dad got called out for parking his truck in the street, like an eyesore. A new family was accused of letting their cat terrorize birds when they didn't even own a cat. And my favorite, someone got tagged for excessively fragrant laundry pods. The group was spiraling between "this is unhinged" and "maybe they have a point about the pods." I tried to stay out of it. But then Concerned Neighbor went after my partner, Maya. They posted a photo of our front porch at dawn, like actually our porch, and wrote, "Some people in this community think packages are modern art and leave them out for days." The timestamp on the photo would have been funny if it wasn't creepy. The package had arrived at 6:11 a.m. and the post went up at 6:22. 11 minutes between delivery and public shaming. That's not concern, that's a stakeout. Maya laughed it off, but I could tell it got under her skin. Not because of the package, because someone was near enough and invested enough to be documenting our house like they were running a true crime podcast. I did what any normal person would do. I started a spreadsheet. Call it curiosity, call it pettiness, call it a quiet suburban hobby. I logged each post's time, the weather, who had been out walking a dog around then, which ring cams had motion pings and little verbal quirks from Concerned Neighbors' captions. I noticed something weirdly specific. They used exactly 2 spaces after periods, capitalized seasons like they were proper nouns. "This autumn is unforgiving," and wrote "per se" instead of "per se." They also signed off with "best CN" twice, which was either an accident or the most chaotic soft docs ever. I wasn't trying to unmask anyone. Really. I was trying to make myself feel like I could understand the unknown eyes in our bushes. But once you start mapping a mystery, the map starts dragging you. A month in, I had a short list. 4 people matched the timeline quirks and the verbal tells. One of them was my next-door neighbor with the immaculate diagonal lawn. One was the HOA president. One was a quiet, retired librarian who seemed far too kind for this mess. And one was Helen, my mother-in-law. I didn't even want to think it. Helen is kind, in a brisk lemon zest sort of way. She's the person who will tell a waiter, "This soup is oversalted," and then tip 25% because she respects labor. She alphabetizes her spice rack. She also uses 2 spaces after a period like it's 1998. And she says "per se" with such confidence that you almost believe Latin changed just to please her. I put the list away. Sometimes a little ignorance is a space heater for the soul. Then came the block party. Our cul-de-sac throws a summer bash every year. Potluck tables, rented bouncy house, a playlist that shuffles between 80s rock and a suspicious amount of ABBA. The HOA calls it community cohesion, which is a cute way of saying eat deviled eggs while staring politely at the person you argued with online. The day was bright, the chalk drawings were adorable, and I was balancing 3 paper plates because it's impossible to choose between potato salads. Everyone was on their best behavior. Even the HOA president looked vaguely relaxed, like a golden retriever after a bath. And then, concerned neighbor posted. At 2:46 p.m, while the block party was reaching peak hot dog consumption, a new post appeared. A close-up photo of a cooler with a slightly cracked lid and the caption, "Some of us don't respect food safety." Leaving a cooler unsealed invites pests. Community standards exist for a reason. The cooler belonged to Mrs. Morales, who had just spent the morning making homemade tamales for everyone. The mood hiccuped. You could feel the temperature change. Mrs. Morales is universally beloved, and nothing unites a street faster than someone being rude to its human sunshine. People looked around. Even the playlist seemed to skip. I watched Mrs. Morales glance at her phone, then at her cooler, then at the group with a small, embarrassed smile, like she'd personally let us all down by not installing a biometric seal on a Coleman lid. Her husband shut the cooler gently, and I felt something sharp and protective flick on in my chest. Maya squeezed my arm. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Here's what I did not plan to do. I did not plan to investigate, announce, or expose anything at a party. My entire conflict style is send a very reasonable email 48 hours later. But something about the way the post landed, about that tiny dip in Mrs. Morales' shoulders, about the way a happy afternoon turned into a group flinch, it made my mouth move before my brain voted. I climbed onto the curb like it was a stage, held up my phone, and said, calmly, because this is SpiderFish and we breathe first, "Hey, quick thing. That anonymous post about the cooler? We're not doing that today. We're here to eat and be neighbors, not judge each other's lids." People laughed. A soft ripple. The tension loosened a notch. I should have stopped there. I didn't. I added, "Also, if concerned neighbor wants to share a concern, they're welcome to do it without hiding. We're a community. We sign our names." The HOA president coughed. Someone muttered, "Amen." Somewhere, a child in a bouncy house yelled, "Wee!" like a moral victory balloon. And because courage is often just curiosity with caffeine, I said, "In fact, I think I know who it is." Everything got very still. The ABBA faded like the playlist sensed plot. 20 pairs of eyes made a tidy ring. I promise I didn't want a mob, I wanted a reset button. But now I had a microphone made of vibes and no exit strategy. I swallowed, felt Maya's hand still on my arm and said, "I'm not going to name names. I'll just say, whoever you are, you've hurt people here. Sometimes with small cuts that add up. If you've got concerns, own them. Otherwise, please stop. It should have ended there. A gentle boundary, a graceful out. The story could have been a neat bow. But scandal is a cat that sees a bow and pounces. Behind me, I heard a quiet, unmistakable voice. Well, if we're being honest, I turned. Helen was standing next to the dessert table, holding a plate of lemon bars like a prop in a courtroom drama. Her chin was lifted in that way she has when she's about to say something calmly devastating, like, "This sauce is fine," when she means, "This tastes like regret." The thing about knowing someone is you know their preambles. I knew that preamble like I know our Wi-Fi password. She continued, "I made that account." Then, to the circle, with a small apologetic wave, "I'm concerned neighbor. You know how in Minecraft a thunderstorm rolls in and the light just drops? This felt like that, except nobody ran for a bed. A collective O moved through the group like a breeze through leaves. A couple of people nodded to themselves because of course she used 2 spaces. The HOA president stared like he'd just found a new clause in the covenants. Mrs. Morales blinked, then put a hand over her cooler like it needed comfort. Helen exhaled like a balloon that had been too full for too long. I never meant to hurt anyone. I thought people might listen better if they weren't worrying about offending a neighbor. Anonymity felt gentler. She made a face that was about 3 parts regret and 1 part per se. Someone in the back said, "Gentler for who?" And it wasn't unkind, just accurate. Helen absorbed it. I watched it land. She turned to Mrs. Morales. "I'm sorry. Your tamales are always the highlight. The cooler was unnecessary." Then to the general audience, "So were most of my posts. That could have been the end. A confession, an apology, a slow return to potato salad. But scandal loves an encore." From the sidewalk, diagonal lawn neighbor said, "What about my truck? You called it an eyesore." The retired librarian, voice soft but steady, said, "You implied I was spying from my bay window." A teen lifted his skateboard and said, "You said I was a menace, ma'am." Helen took each comment like a wave you decide not to fight, letting it lift and lower you without pretending it's fun. "I'm sorry," she said to each of them. Not the performative kind, not the "I'm sorry you feel that way" kind. The kind that puts its hands up and says, "I did this." Then she looked at me. "And I'm sorry for the porch photo." She tilted her head, rueful. I don't know why I took that. There's a kind of intimacy in a public apology that makes people shuffle. We can forgive quietly. It's harder when it's mutual theatre. I wanted to rescue her and also point at the cooler and say, "See, it's exhausting being a person." Maya squeezed my arm again, and I remembered I was not the protagonist. We were all the background to each other. I stepped off the curb. "Thank you for saying it," I said, "and maybe we can retire concerned neighbor. If there's a concern, put your name on it, or better, bring cupcakes and talk to each other." The HOA president, who is deeply suspicious of cupcakes unless there's a line about frosting in the bylaws, actually smiled. "We could add that to the code," he said. "Cupcake clause." Someone turned the music back up, mercifully to ABBA again, because forgiveness is easier with a chorus. The bouncy house resumed its ongoing crisis. People drifted back into conversations. The tension didn't dissolve so much as it redistributed into small, livable pieces. I thought we were out of the woods. Then Helen, who had just removed her own mask with bravery and lemon bars, tugged my sleeve and said, very quietly, "I'm proud of you." I blinked. "For spreadsheeting your alter ego?" "For not naming me," she said. "You let me do it. That matters." We stood there. 2 people who love the same person and occasionally annoy each other in the exact same way, listening to ABBA tell us that the loser is standing small and thinking maybe the winner is whoever decides not to keep score today. Later, after the last folding chair was folded and the last deviled egg destiny was fulfilled, I got a DM. It was from the HOA president, subject, Cupcake Clause Draft. Attached was a little PNG, a simple neighborhood code of conduct. Be kind. Sign your name. Assume good faith. Bring cupcakes, with a blank line at the bottom for signatures. He asked if I'd co-post it with him. I laughed out loud, showed Maya, and said yes. This is where I ask, am I the a-hole? for calling out the anonymity without naming names, for creating a moment that forced a reveal, for letting the reveal happen next to the lemon bars. Here's what I've learned. Scandal doesn't always need a villain. Sometimes it needs a room with enough air for everyone to breathe the truth. And that day, we got to exhale. SpiderFish commentary. Okay, quick deep breath together. That one's messy in the way real life is messy. Right intentions, wrong methods, a cooler lid in the middle like a tiny plastic crown no one wanted. If you're keeping score at home, I'm putting OP at not the asshole, with a soft asterisk for curiosity mixed with impulse. Anonymous critique always feels safe per se. Sorry, Helen, but it rarely builds anything. Signing your name isn't just about accountability. It's about remembering there's a person on the other side of the porch photo, the cooler, the lawn, the skateboard. If this were Minecraft, I'd say, torches and signs. Light up the dark corners. And if you've got something to say, put it on a sign where everyone can read it. Bonus points if you bring cake. So far tonight, we've had disappearing wardrobes, misplaced fantasy novels, an engagement toast that should have been a wedding vow, and a mother-in-law running a suburban gossip account. One more story before we wind down. And trust me, this one has scandal stamped all over it. Am I the a-hole for outing my brother's secret relationship at Thanksgiving because I thought everyone already knew? So, I'm a 26-year-old woman, and my family is, let's just say, theatrical. We're loud, nosy, and holiday gatherings are basically an open mic night for life updates. If you've got news, new job, new haircut, new toaster, someone's going to announce it before dessert. Enter my older brother Dylan. Dylan's the golden child. Smart, successful, charming in that way, where even the dog listens to him. But Dylan is also secretive. He'll casually drop, "Oh yeah, I ran a marathon last week," like it's no big deal. So when he started acting cagey a few months back, disappearing on weekends, smiling at his phone, humming in the kitchen, the family radar went wild. At Thanksgiving, the radar finally beeped. Picture this, 15 of us crammed around my mom's dining table. Turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce shaped like a can. The usual chaos. Dylan walks in late, looking extra polished, and sits down with this secretive little grin. My aunt notices immediately. "What's that smile? You've got news?" Dylan shrugs. "Nothing big." But he's glowing like a Minecraft beacon, and I, being his younger sister and lifelong teaser, couldn't resist. So I said jokingly, "What, are you hiding a girlfriend or something?" Cue the silence. Forks paused, heads turned, and Dylan went pale. After about 3 excruciating seconds, Dylan sighed and said, "Actually, yeah, I do." The room exploded. My mom squealed. My uncle clapped him on the back. Cousins started peppering him with questions. Everyone was thrilled. Except there was one problem. Dylan's girlfriend? She wasn't just anyone. She was Sophie, my childhood best friend. And apparently, they'd been together for almost a year. Now, listen, I love Sophie. We grew up braiding each other's hair, sneaking snacks into movie theaters, crying over teenage crushes. But she never told me she was dating my brother. Not once. So when Dylan said, "It's Sophie," I blurted out, loudly, "What?" And then, because my brain was on autopilot, I added, "Wait, you've been sneaking around behind my back?" The whole table froze. Sophie wasn't there, but her absence suddenly felt like the juiciest scandal of the year. My mom gasped like she was watching a soap opera. My cousins immediately whipped out their phones under the table to text her. Dylan glared at me. I was going to tell everyone when we were ready. But by then, the cat was not only out of the bag, it was doing laps around the turkey. Dinner turned into a Q&A session. My mom wanted to know why Sophie hadn't come to Thanksgiving if they were serious. My aunt wanted to know how long it had been going on. My cousin asked if they'd done the math on how awkward it would be if they got married, and Sophie became my sister-in-law. Dylan shut down. He said, "This is why I didn't tell anyone," and barely touched his plate. Later, he cornered me in the kitchen. "Why did you do that?" he asked, furious. I told him I thought everyone knew, that it was obvious, that he'd been acting so suspicious that I figured the secret was already half out. He didn't buy it. He said I stole their moment, that I embarrassed him, that I made Sophie look like she was hiding from me on purpose. And now, a week later, he still isn't talking to me. Okay, let's pause here because wow, this is the definition of a family scandal. On the one hand, OP didn't mean to cause chaos. A slip of the tongue at Thanksgiving isn't unusual. Honestly, it's tradition. And Dylan had been so obvious that it's hard to blame her for connecting the dots out loud. On the other hand, yeah, she stole his thunder. Announcing someone's relationship, especially when it involves your best friend, is one of those not your news to share situations. Even if it was an accident, it still landed like a firework in the middle of dinner. Here's my verdict. OP isn't the asshole, but she is the chaos. And every family has one. The sibling who can't keep a secret, the cousin who stirs the pot, the uncle who brings up politics. That's just Thanksgiving. If this happened in Minecraft, it's like accidentally hitting a pigman in the nether. You didn't mean to start a war, but now the whole mob is chasing you, and all you can do is run. And that's where we'll wrap up for tonight, friends. We've been through a lot together. A roommate who thought borrowing meant breaking into a closet, an office that accidentally got treated to an elf romance novel, a work wife who stole the spotlight at an engagement party, a mother-in-law who secretly ran the neighborhood gossip account, and a Thanksgiving reveal that turned dinner into a soap opera. Some of it was funny, some of it was messy, and all of it was just a little bit scandalous. Exactly the kind of stories Reddit was made for. I hope you had as much fun listening as I had telling these. Whether you're relaxing, falling asleep, or just letting this play in the background while you build something in Minecraft, thanks for spending this time here at SpiderFish. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you've got a favorite story from tonight, or one that made you laugh out loud, let me know. I always love hearing your thoughts. Until next time, take care of yourself, stay a little curious, and remember, sometimes the best way to handle life's chaos is to sit back, relax, and let the blocks stack themselves.